and who your servicer is. Now, the federal servicer is the one who will be handling your loans. They are a contractor from the federal government. And if you do your exit counseling, it will explain your rights and responsibilities as a borrower. And you should do this before you leave school. So if you do have any questions, you can let us know at studentaid.gov and complete your exit counseling. You will need your FSA password, FSA ID, to get into any of the federal sites. So try to remember what your password is, and if you don't, there are ways that they can reinstate it for you. Now, a parent can borrow student loans for a dependent's educational expenses. Now, it is the parent's responsibility to make those payments, not the student's responsibility. And the loan cannot be transferred to the student. Now, some parents will make an arrangement to take out the loan for a student, and then the student agrees to repay the Federal Plus loan for the parent. But even with this arrangement, the loan cannot be assumed by the student for federal purposes. Now, a number of you may be going to work in a nonprofit company. These loans can be forgiven under the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. This is a program that if you work full-time for a government organization, federal, state, municipal, or for a nonprofit company, you may be eligible to have part of your federal loans forgiven. You would use an income-driven repayment plan to extend your period of repayment past the 10-year period. And your loan payments will be less because instead of paying on 10 years, you'll be paying on usually like a 20-year repayment. And after making 120 payments on a monthly basis, the remainder of your loan will be forgiven. And this does not become taxable income for IRS purposes. Now, the best thing you can do is to send in an annual confirmation of your employment. This will save you time and effort if you wait for 10 years and then you have to go back to all of your employees for the past 10 years to get them to certify that you were working with them. Let's go to the next slide. Now, if you see here at 100, this is based on taking $26,000 for all of your loans. Your payment would drop down from like $290 to $198. And after 120 payments, which is 10 years, there would be a principal balance left of $17,245.77. That amount will be forgiven if you're working for a nonprofit corporation. You don't have to be at the same nonprofit for 10 years. You can be at different nonprofits, just within the sector. Private loans. Private loans are loans that are not governed by federal government student loan regulations. The interest and repayment provisions are established by the lender based on the borrower and the co-signer's credit history and the school the student attends. Now, students who attend Eckerd, because we do have a very low default rate, get a better interest rate because they are attending Eckerd. The lender may be a commercial or a state lending source. The commercial lenders, Sallie Mae, Discover, Wells Fargo. The state-backed programs, VSAC, New Jersey Class, Rhode Island State Assistance Authority, or MEFA, which is the Massachusetts Educational Financing Agency, which is a nonprofit private lending agency. And you would, for private loans, cannot be consolidated with your federal loans to receive, you're eligible for the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. The private loan will bill and collect your payments for your private loan. If you return to school, check with your lender to see if you will qualify for an in-school deferment. Now, if you don't make a payment on your private loan, the co-signer of the loan will be required to assume your payments. The one thing you want to try to do is always be in touch with either your private loan company or the federal loan servicer if you are having trouble making payments. Okay, the terms and conditions of your loan. The loan servicer is responsible for the billing and collection of your loan payments. Assistance offered by federal loan servicers, often not available with private lenders, include forbearance, where you don't make payments for a period of time, but the interest continues to accrue, or an income-driven repayment plan, which adjusts your monthly payment according to your income. Remember to always update your address and phone number with your loan servicer or private lender. Not getting a bill is not a reason to miss a payment. You want to avoid going into default. For federal purposes, if you don't make a payment for 270 days, you will go into default. 270 payments is 9 months. So you do have that 9-month period before your loan goes into default.
Now, before we move forward, Dr. Pat, we do have some questions, if you don't mind.
Okay, sure.
So the first one is, does studentaid.gov only show me what you owe in direct federal loans?
Yes. It will also show you who
Other
the servicer is. It does not show private loans.
So they'd have to go to the private loan website to find that.
Whoever they borrowed the funds from will have that information.
Okay, perfect. And so how many years do you have to work in one of those fields to have your loans forgiven for the nonprofit?
10 years.
Perfect.
It doesn't have to be at one time. You can take a time off, go to graduate school, and then come back. And if you're working in a nonprofit, work again, refile your employment eligibility forms with the federal government every year so that they know you have resumed working in the nonprofit sector.
So can you say more about the kind of jobs that you'd be able to get the PSLF, or is there a website we can look at all of the list?
Well, let's say if you work for a nonprofit college, Eckerd College is nonprofit, you can get your loans forgiven. If you work for Mote Marine, if you work for the Florida Aquarium, if you work for, I think Clearwater Aquarium is not a private, but is a city-run aquarium. Those would all be types of jobs that would allow you to have your loan forgiven. If you work as a social worker in a public agency, if you work in a school as a teacher full-time, you can get your loans forgiven. Not a private school, but a public school or a nonprofit school.
Perfect.
You work in a hospital as a social worker in a hospital, you can have a nonprofit hospital like St. Anthony's, you can have your loans forgiven.
So another question we have is, as we are paying back our loans, why does the interest amount decrease, but the principal amount does not?
Because you are paying your interest back first, and then you start on your principal, just like you do in a mortgage. They front load the interest in, and that's why the interest decreases, but the principal amount doesn't decrease as much.
Okay. And so what's the difference between a state-backed private loan and commercially backed private loan?
It's just the holder of the loan it's still a private loan, but it's being held by the state and not by a commercial company.
Love it. All right. And we have four more right now. So what is an in-school deferment?
In-school deferment is when you're in school, you would need to complete an in-school deferment to have your lender not bill you while you're in school.
And is that on just private or is that for federal as well?
That's for federal as well. Most of the times, a lot of the schools are in the National Student Loan Clearinghouse, which schools send a file of who's enrolled and if they're half-time every month to the clearinghouse. So you may not need to file a deferment form. But depending upon the school you're going to, if they don't file it every month, you may want to have a deferment form completed. And I believe you can get deferment forms on your servicer's website.
Perfect. And then so after graduating, are we required to begin paying our federal loans right away, or is there a grace period?
There is a 6-month grace period after you leave school before you will get your first bill. It's an adjustment time to help you if you're just starting in a job and you're getting settled. So you have this 6-month period of not paying your loans. And if you're going to work in a nonprofit area, you may not want to prepay your loans. Otherwise, you won't be able to get full benefit of the cancellation.
Okay. And so if you have a private and federal loan, do you have to pay them separately? And if so, how do you set up the payment plan separately?
Yes, you would be paying them separately. Now, there are some private loans who consolidate your federal loans in with them. But if you do that, you will lose the ability to get the public service loan forgiveness plan.
And does interest still accrue while I'm in school?
Not on your subsidized loan, no. On your unsubsidized loan, yes.
Okay. And will having loan forgiveness mess with your credit?
No, not at all, because you're going to be making 10 years of on-time payments. So that helps your credit.
Perfect. And this is good. A lot of students have a lot of questions. So if Eckerd counts for PSLF, do federal work study and SA jobs on campus count, or do we have to graduate?
You have to have full-time jobs.
Okay, so full-time. So if they work at Eckerd full-time, yes, but no for a side job.
You have to be, I think it is 30 hours a week to qualify as full-time. If you're working at 2 separate nonprofits part-time, if the total of them equal 30 hours, you can qualify for public service loan forgiveness program.
Perfect. And so how do I set up an income-driven repayment plan? Is that federal only?
That would be federal, and you would be in touch with your servicer.
You can do it right online.
Right.
Okay. And then you mentioned the 6-month forgiveness that they give you after graduating. Can you still make payments during those 6 months?
You can, but you're not required to.
And you can do that while you're in school as well, correct?
I usually tell students, don't do it while you're in school because you want to save your money so you don't have to borrow for the next year.
That makes sense. And somebody else asked that if I work enough hours as a graduate assistant at a public university grad school, does that count as PSLF?
I am not sure.
Okay, that's a good one. We'll
with the
link back to
H.
that.
Yeah, you'd have to talk to the Human Resource Office of the university to see if they will do a loan forgiveness for you.
And I think another really important thing to know, because I've noticed that a lot of people think this is 100% guaranteed, the PSLF. Can you speak to the amount of times it's actually forgiven? Because I don't want somebody to do all this and have it not actually be forgiven.
Well, up until 2008, there were two loan programs. One loan that was held by private lenders, which was called the the FELP loan program. Those loans cannot be forgiven. But after 2008, they eliminated private lenders for federal loans. So all of the loans are federal direct loans. Now, if you happen to have the lender base, the FELP loan program, you can always consolidate your loans into federal direct lending and then get your public service loan forgiveness that way.
Perfect. And then the last question I have right now is, if you go back to school, are you still required to make loan payments while you're in school?
For federal loans, as long as you are half-time, and half-time depends upon the graduate school you're going to. Most schools, it may be 6 hours, or then that is half-time. I'm sorry, my cat just broke into my office. Come on, Coco. This is Coco, and she is a real pain. Come on, you've got to go out. Oh.
That's okay. We're seeing all types of videos online about, working from home and all the kids and pets running around. So I'm sure that that's no worries at all.
Okay.
Several people are saying they love Coco and to bring her back.
Well, I try, but she'd be all over the computer keys.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so we've answered that round of questions so far. So let's get back into the working with federal loans where we picked off, and then we'll do another QA session in the middle or at the end.
Great. If we can just go to what's the one thing you want to avoid with federal loans and private loans is going into default. If we could just get that slide up, Michael. Okay. Yep. If you don't make scheduled payments, your loans will go into default. Default is reported to the credit bureau and may impact your ability to get credit. Your income tax refund and other federal benefits will be taken by the Department of Education to help satisfy your indebtedness. Now, if you get married and you haven't told your spouse that you're in default on your student loan, and you file a joint tax return, and then the tax refund does not show up and then goes to repay your defaulted loans, your spouse may not be very happy with you. Your wages also can be garnished, which means that a portion of your weekly or monthly salary would be taken by your employer and paid to the federal government. You would not be eligible for any additional federal aid. Let's say you're going back to graduate school, you could not get any federal loans until your default has been satisfied. You will also be charged collection fees, court costs, late fees, and the amount that you owe will increase. So we want to really try to stay out of default. If you're experiencing problems, get in touch with your loan servicer right away and see what arrangements can be made to help you. They may offer you a deferment or forbearance, or they could put you in a income contingent loan plan where your payments may be as low as 0. and after 20 years of making payments, your loan can be forgiven. But if the amount is forgiven, that would be considered taxable income for IRS purposes. If you become permanently disabled, your loan is canceled. And if you are deceased, your loan is canceled. Now, this is very strange. They've had the death benefit cancellation for 40 years. It was not until about 5 years ago that they asked for a death certificate. There were some people who would call up and say, oh, the mother would call, my son just passed away. We're not going to pay, he's not going to pay on the student loans. And they never asked for a death certificate. So years later, these people are showing up on Social Security rule, showing up as being tax-paying citizens. So now they are requiring a death certificate confirming that the person is deceased. You would think that would be a first thing that the federal government would have asked, but they didn't ask. And again, if you're enrolled at least half-time in a graduate program, your federal loans will be in deferment. For private loans, you will need to check with the lender. When your loans are in deferment, no payments are required. No interest will accrue on federal direct subsidized loans. Interest will accrue on unsubsidized loans. When you're in graduate school, there are no subsidized loans anymore. Everything is going to be unsubsidized, so the interest will accrue while you take out loans for graduate school. Work with the registrar of your graduate school to make sure you are put in deferment. If you return to school full-time and you have annually sent in your employment confirmation, you will receive credit for those payments you made while you were working in a nonprofit organization. I know we've already answered some questions. This is very confusing. I've been doing financial aid for 45 years and I still get confused.
Yeah, I think the laws and regulations and everything around that are quite extensive. So I definitely appreciate you kind of going through it, but feel free to ask as many questions as you can, just because this is one of those things where as you get out, you're going to learn more and more how important it is. And getting one answer right now could save you thousands of dollars later on.
Right.
So here's a first question. So if we do become permanently disabled, do they require proof of that as with the death certificate for the deceased condition? If so, what form?
They do require proof of that. And so you would have to have a doctor certify that you were permanently disabled. Let's say you then got the permanently disabled cancellation. If you wanted to go back to graduate school and borrow money for graduate schools, you would have to get a letter from the doctor saying you were able to go back to work, and then those other loans would be reinstated.
And now with the Perkins loans, which no longer exist, how does payment work with that?
Well, I believe Eckerd has been a lender under the Perkins loan program. I believe that we have turned over our loan portfolio to the federal government, who will be in touch with you. If you have a federal Perkins loan, there are some very good cancellation benefits for working as a teacher or in other nonprofit areas, an EMT, and those cancellation benefits are better than 10 years. Some of them only require a 5-year time. So you may want to look at your promissory note for your Perkins loan to find out exactly what those cancellation benefits are for the federal Perkins loan. The business office at the school can help you. You can send an email to Karen Pascal. She has been handling the federal Perkins loan program, as well as Eckerd does have some small private loans that we award out, which are private loans, such as the Beck or the Fruhoff loan, which you would be getting a bill from Eckerd for that. I believe the interest on those loans is only 3% interest.
And what is the biggest misconception that
The biggest misconception about student loans that I've heard over these years is that if I graduate, I don't have to pay my loans. That's not the case. Coco, what?
She's back
She's back. Okay, Coco.
by popular demand.
She's back. Okay, here.
So what does it mean to refinance your student loans? How do you do it? When and how often should you do it?
If you have federal student loans, you want to refinance them, there are private companies such as SoFi who will say they'll give you a lower interest rate. Now, this is going to probably be better for you if you're not going into a nonprofit company, because you will lose those benefits. But there are several companies that do a loan consolidation, and if you do have private loans, you may be able to consolidate your private and your federal loans together and get a lower interest rate and a longer repayment. But those would be through private companies.
Is there any negativity that comes from that? It seems like there's a lot of positive to it.
The big negativity is check to see if you'll still get the death benefit if you refinance your student loans, because private loans for a long time did not cancel the loan if the person died. And
So it would go to family?
it would go to the co-signer of the loan. I think some of them have finally gotten a heart and are canceling those loans. And then if you're going into a nonprofit sector, you lose that benefit.
And so in your opinion, what's the best way to approach student loans after graduation? What first step?
The first step is to find out how much you borrowed and who your servicer is. I've had students come back from me to me and say, I never knew I took a loan. Well, how do you think your bill was paid? I hear you, Coco. Oh, you are a pain today. Come on, sit with mommy. Here.
So when does exit counseling have to be set up? Does it have to be done by the time you graduate or within the 6-month grace period?
Well, we recommend you do it before you graduate. You could even do it now, and that will go over all of your rights and responsibilities and what you should look forward to when you enter repayment, as well as when you go into deferment, or if you're going to get a PSLF, Public Service Loan Forgiveness.
Perfect. And then if you start in a nonprofit field but later go to a for-profit, does your loan get reinstated?
Well, you would have to spend 10 years in the nonprofit field to get canceled. After the 10 years, if you go to work for a profit company, you would still get the loan forgiveness.
And I think for a really good point of this that might be understood is when those 10 years you're working for a nonprofit, you're still paying that loan, correct?
Yeah, you are paying the loan. The provision is you have to make a monthly payment for 10 years.
Yeah, so it's not that it is not instated when you're in a nonprofit. Your loan is always instated and you're paying on that loan, but after 10 years in nonprofits, it could be taken away.
Right.
Forgiven.
The remaining balance, not, and if you don't make your payments for 10 years, you don't qualify for the benefit.
Yeah. So I just want to really reinstate that if you work in a nonprofit, it does not mean you don't have to pay your loan. You're still paying your loan, but after 10 years, you have a possibility of it being forgiven. And remember that it's not guaranteed, it's a possibility. So for studentaid.gov, FSA.gov, is the FSA ID and login the same as the FAFSA login?
Yes, it is. They've now made that all one thing, and they even have an app that you can put on your tablet or your phone that you can use to make payments or get information on your student loans.
Oh, nice and easy.
Yep. It got into the
And then what
21st
happens if you
century.
miss a month of loan payments? We did.
If you miss 1 month of payments, I think on public service loan forgiveness, I think they give you a chance to make that up. So if you send in a payment late, you won't have missed that window of 120 payments.
And then just for me, speaking from my personal standpoint, an important thing for your credit, because I took a credit hit at one point because I didn't realize that I wasn't still in the loan payment. Often your loans are broken up into 6 to 10 to more loans. So if you miss 1 month, you're not missing one payment, you're often missing 10 to 15 payments. So it looks 10 to 15 times worse on your credit history if you miss one. It's really important to stay on top of that. And if you can't pay, talk to them about that, but it's not like missing one payment, it's like missing 10 to 15 of them possibly.
Most of our students, if you've got direct loans, you will be always with the same servicer. Now, if you don't like your servicer, you can request.
Disadvantage to, I'm sorry, is there any disadvantage to repaying student debt before graduation or within the grace period, especially if you want to do PSLF?
If you want to do PFS, public loan service forgiveness, you probably don't want to pay your loan because that will mean that you'll have less forgiven. However, if a family member or relative says, I'm going to repay your loans, that would be fine.
Makes sense. So I mean, yeah, so when you're paying during graduation stuff, your PLSF cannot start until you work full-time at that organization, correct? So paying
That's correct.
prior to that or paying during graduation or while you're a student, it doesn't help it. It ends up making you pay more.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm probably not the only one, but I feel a lot of anxiety about my student loans. What do you tell other people who feel this way?
There are ways that you can, if you're feeling anxious, it's probably because you don't know how you're going to repay them. And there are ways through making arrangements with your lenders to repay your loan to help relieve that anxiety. If you're having trouble making your payments, talk to your lender. Maybe they can put you on an income contingent repayment where they would look at how much money you're making and determine what your monthly payment will be. It could be as low as $5 if you're not making money. If you're on unemployment, it would be $0. But you do need to be in touch with your servicer or your lender. Don't just put that bill at the end of the pile and ignore it. And don't ignore their calls. They will be in touch with you. They will send you information. You don't want to go into default on the loans.
And that kind of answers another question is, can you set up a payment plan that works for you, or does a loan company set it up for you?
You can at any time you're having trouble, call your servicer and get a payment that works for you. You can also change the date when it's due and make it more convenient. Sometimes, I mean, I've been in places where I've only been paid once a month, and that's not fun. But you may want to say, okay, I'm going to pay it on the 15th of the month because I get paid twice a month, and that's the better paycheck for me.
Perfect. And then who should you do exit counseling with?
Well, it's all done online. And
It's through FAFSA or whoever your loans are with?
through FSA ID.
Okay.
You want to say goodbye, Coco?
And that's all the questions we have. Feel free to ask any more questions we have right now while we have Dr. Pat. Otherwise, we will conclude the overall Senior Series Day 2. And then just know that moving forward, you will be able to reach out to us with similar questions. And obviously, Dr. Pat is within Eckerd, and we can help you guys without any of these questions
Say bye, Coco.
to give you more in-depth answers to questions.
Yeah, and you can always send me an email, even though we're not in the office. We are working from home, and so I will answer your email.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Pat. We'll make sure to, in the email tomorrow, we're going to send out this presentation. You'll be able to get a link to this video, so you can go back on these questions if you'd like, as well as reach out to her or anybody else that presented earlier in the day, so you can ask personal questions about any of this.
Have a
So
good afternoon.
thank you all so much for sticking with us. I know you have
Stay
absolutely
safe,
have a great
everyone.
afternoon, and yes, stay safe, stay inside, and we'll hopefully see y'all soon eventually. But
Okay.
thank you so much, and have a good one, and we'll see you all back here. Last note is Senior Series 3 will be doing the exact same thing. So that will be on March 26th. You'll get a lot of messages from us in between now and then, but just keep that on your horizon for next month. Thank you
Bye.
for your information.
Thanks.
Bye.